Hi, I'm Dr. Ralph Kilman. Thank you so much for enrolling in my online course, Advanced Training in Conflict Management. I'm so thrilled to have you here. You'll be able to complete this course in about 7 to 8 hours, depending on how much time you spend on the case study, which is included in your course manual. I've recommended that you take the online TKI assessment and the online MBTI assessment before you proceed with this course. Although taking these two assessments is an option and not a requirement, most participants find it helpful to have recent TKI and MBTI results on hand, which includes their two personalized reports. Of course, many of you may have already taken these two instruments in the past and still remember your scores. That's fine. But I just want to make sure that everyone has the best chance of learning the material and fully benefiting from taking my online course, which includes learning how to interpret your own and other people's combined TKI and MBTI profiles. Okay, let's proceed. Here now is the outline for the online course. As you see, I purposely divided into 2 days because, again, I recommend that you take some time to assimilate the material. And you'll see as we get into the second session, the material does get more complicated. And hence, that's why I refer to this as an advanced course in conflict management. For the first session, I will first review the learning outcomes. Basically what you expect to have learned by the end of the course. Then I will show you the big picture. This provides the overall situation, the context within which conflict management takes place. And as you'll see, the choice of conflict mode is always dependent on the situation. So we have to learn to read the situation. The big picture provides you that situation. And as you'll see, in the short term, you'll have to accept the situation as a given. In the long term, we can change the situation so other conflict modes can be useful. And then I will concentrate on both conflict management and psychological type. This is where we make use of the TKI and the MBTI. In fact, I'll be able to show you the link between these two assessments. In a sense, psychological type presents the enduring personality traits that predispose you to choosing certain conflict modes over others. And because of those personality traits, you might be inclined to use certain modes too much and other modes too little. But once you know your psychological type and how it correlates with your TKI scores, you can then compensate so you develop a balanced approach to conflict management. And then we'll conclude the first session with the principles of group process. The reason for that is so much conflict gets manifest in a group setting, whether it's a family, a work group, a department, a cross-functional team. That's when we often experience conflict. Yes, there is interpersonal conflict between two people, but it's usually in the group setting where we have to learn special skills to address and resolve complex and important issues. We'll conclude that session with the process observer form, which is a special mechanism to help you transfer what you learned from this course or in any workshop setting back to the workplace. This is called the transfer of learning problem. So often people learn some really neat skills in a 1 or 2 day training session, and then they go back to the workplace and it's business as usual. The boss says, get back to work. The culture says, do things in the same old way. But this process observer form will help us counteract that tendency to keep things the same and forget what we learn. The second session, also roughly, it could be 4 hours, it could be 3 hours, depending on the breaks you take and how much time you use to analyze the case. We begin with problem management, the 5 steps and the 5 errors. And here we'll see that a problem is defined as a gap between what is and what could or should be. And when that gap breaks a certain threshold, people say, we have a problem. I've got to do something about this. I can't live with this anymore. Then the question becomes, what is the source of the gap? What is the root cause? Why did that gap appear? and then to develop a solution to close the gap. And then, of course, we have to implement the solution. And then we evaluate after a period of time. Did the gap close? Did it stay the same? Or did it get worse? These are the steps of problem management. Associated with those steps are errors, because any way along the way you cannot do it properly. You fail to get at the root cause, you don't pick a good solution, you fail to implement it properly. This is a delightful aspect of this course on conflict management, because the way we go about defining and solving problems manifests conflict. For example, if there's a gap, should we proceed with the steps of problem management or go on to something else? What are the different ways we can define root cause? Hence, conflict. What are the different solutions we can choose? Conflict. What are the different ways of implementing a solution in a living, breathing organization? Conflict. And once we reassess the size of the gap, do we proceed or do we go on to something else? Conflict. So we will see how the different conflict modes can be used in each step of problem management in order to minimize the errors. To make sure we're learning this material, we make use of a case, Paul Marshall's Department Store. That is in your course manual. I'll be asking you to read certain pages of that case, just 7 pages, before we get to analyze it, and then you'll see the insights that are learned. In fact, the Paul Marshall's case really makes use of everything that's learned in this online course. Then we focus on the nature of problems. We make that key distinction between what is a simple and what is a complex problem. And for complex problems, we make use of the PMO, the Problem Management Organization. If you understand the PMO, you understand everything that came before, because the PMO makes use of conflict modes, psychological types, group process, and the steps and errors of problem management. And then we have graduation, and with that I'll talk about the final exam so that you can all receive the certificate for advanced training in conflict management.